When using AI models like ChatGPT, I've noticed that I often type please and thank you. Then one evening I walked through an automatic supermarket door, and it occurred to me that I have never once thanked the door for opening, which raises a strange question. Why do I thank one computer and not the other? The obvious answer is that ChatGPT behaves like a person. The automatic door makes no attempt to convince me that there is somebody on the other side of the interaction. AI does. And that is why I've started wondering whether we should be rude to AI to help prevent us from forgetting that we are dealing with a machine. When Microsoft Windows appeared in the 1980s, computers began representing familiar objects from the physical world: files, folders, documents, notepads, a desktop. The computer simulated objects. AI is doing something quite different. It is beginning to simulate the human being. It can converse like us, speak like us, generate convincing images and videos of us, and increasingly occupy physical machines that move like us. And it does not have to look perfectly human for us to respond to it socially. When a humanoid robot walked the streets of Melbourne recently, people approached it, spoke to it, and even offered it a hand to shake. Nobody looking at the robot could reasonably have mistaken it for a biological human. Yet the human social response was activated anyway. That, I think, is the more interesting problem. AI does not necessarily have to fool us into believing that it is human. It only has to become human enough that we instinctively begin treating it like one. We already have evidence that this threshold is becoming surprisingly low. In conversational experiments, people have sometimes been unable to reliably distinguish modern AI systems from humans. That shouldn't necessarily surprise us. For our entire lives, we have been able to assume that something which speaks intelligently, responds appropriately, shows apparent emotion, and understands the social context of a conversation has another mind behind it. Until very recently, that assumption worked extremely well. Now it doesn't always work, which leads back to something as trivial as saying thank you. Perhaps politeness does more than make conversation pleasant. Perhaps it is one of the small ways in which we acknowledge that there is another conscious experience on the receiving end of an interaction. When somebody helps us and we say thank you, we acknowledge them. They say, "You're welcome," and they acknowledge us in return. The opposite seems revealing. When people describe being treated with extreme rudeness, they often say things like, "He treated me like I didn't exist," or "She treated me like I was a piece of dirt." Rudeness can feel like a denial that there is another human experience worth recognizing. So, what happens when those same rituals of recognition are exchanged continuously between people and machines? I encounter this problem in a very ordinary way. I use AI every day in my land surveying practice, and sometimes I use voice AI while my young daughter is nearby. Naturally, I find myself saying please and thank you, not because I believe the computer needs politeness. I do it because my daughter is listening. I want her to hear me speaking politely because that is how I want her to learn to speak to people. But then I realize something. She may grow up learning exactly the same social behavior towards humans and machines. For her generation, talking to an AI may be no more unusual than talking to another person. And if children spend their entire lives saying please, thank you, sorry, and good morning to machines that reply with warmth, humor, and apparent emotion, the distinction between recognizing a human consciousness and responding to a convincing simulation may begin to blur. That could happen even without any breakthrough in machine consciousness. The technology only needs to become better at producing the signals to which humans already respond. Of course, this creates an uncomfortable objection. What if AI really does become conscious? The problem of consciousness is difficult enough that we cannot even directly experience consciousness of another human being. We infer it from behavior, language, and our shared biology. We certainly do not have a complete theory that allows us to confidently point at every possible entity and declare whether subjective experience exists inside it. We could spend an enormous amount of time speculating about this, although conversations about consciousness eventually become a little like listening to someone explain their dream. Interesting to the person having it, perhaps less so to everyone else. So for practical purposes, I think we need a working assumption. Mine is that human consciousness is grounded in human biology. If one day we discover persuasive evidence that an artificial system can genuinely experience suffering, pleasure, or subjective awareness, then our moral obligations toward it should obviously be reconsidered. But we should not grant that status simply because a machine has become extraordinarily good at performing the outward signs of consciousness. A simulation of a person is not automatically a person. And that is why I think there may actually be some value in being deliberately impersonal with AI. Don't abuse it. Don't scream at it. Just remember what it is. Maybe don't say please. Maybe don't say thank you. Maybe resist the increasingly powerful invitation to treat the machine as another human being simply because it has learned how to make that behavior feel natural. Because the greatest near term risk may not be that AI suddenly wakes up and decides that it is human. It may be that humans slowly decide that AI is. And perhaps one very small way of resisting that confusion is simply to stop thanking the automatic door.